It started with a broad statement that says we believe that we're going to be bringing, 10x value versus the cost of implementing this particular service. And we were expecting to have to defend that assertion and go into a fair bit of detail. And we're sitting at the conference table. We have on the projection screen a big slide that describes the various value drivers that we had assumed. And so the way we built that was based on an Excel-based ROI model that was transformed into a Trefis interactive experience, and we literally had that Trefis view up on the screen. And you immediately saw our clients looking at this and asking, hey, tell me about that particular driver. So there was a question around the TCO branch and said, how did you get to that number? And it wasn't in a I'm challenging and doubting, but it was more just in earnest trying to understand it. And I said, okay, well, if you blow this particular branch out, here are the 4 or 5 different drivers that we have underneath it. In fact, what was interesting was I actually saw the customer then reach into his briefcase and pull out his laptop where he was actually fishing for the business case and the model that he had built himself. And he was just kind of spot checking it. And from what I could gather in his responses, these were more or less in line. But as soon as we made that statement, the customer literally cut me off and said, you know what? It's interesting you say that because I've actually started putting together an internal business case of my own. And I think that the market value of this opportunity is actually 20x what we're investing in the service. And so right then and there, there was this immediate relief that I felt, as well as I could see it on our sales team's faces as well, to say, wait a minute, we weren't that absurd with our assertion around the value that we're bringing. Our customer not only seems to get that, but they even have a higher expectation of what it could be. Like, this is exactly what we got to be doing. This is exactly where we want the conversation to go, because we need to be able to first convince ourselves that we're bringing this much value, and then figure out how we explain that to our customer. And that totally changed the tone of the meeting from being something that we, walking in there, thought was going to be really awkward and intimidating and may not yield a positive outcome, to one where when we started talking about value and when we said we think that it's going to be 10x value, and to hear our customer respond with, we actually think it may be 20x, all of a sudden the conversation was much more about the gain frame of reference versus the loss of having to pay a vendor. What was interesting in the hallway then afterwards was a realization from our colleagues in sales that, hey, I think we're onto something here, right? This is actually the way in which we ought to have every conversation.